There is a book that describes, with almost unsettling precision and detail, the course of your day up until the moment you decided to play this video. And the doubtful thoughts that are crossing your mind right now as you listen to me. This book is currently buried and lost in a nearly endless network of corridors inside the Library of Babel. This total library that you are about to explore is one of the most dizzying ideas ever produced by the human mind, because it alone contains, written on paper, all the stories, all the thoughts that it is possible to have. By skimming through the immensity of this library that contains absolutely every story, you will come face to face with the dizzying feeling of infinity, as if you encountered an army of monkeys frantically typing on typewriters in the dark. Like explorers in despair, searching for the book that explains the origin and purpose of an ocean of incoherent words around a corner. Maybe even during this journey, you might end up opening by chance a book describing the dreams you will have tonight. The story of a person who doesn't exist yet, like the unknown date and details of your death. First, before we explore this infinity, that being said, let's get back to our infernal library, whose setting I need to describe for you, and it's monumental. Picture it as a 10-page short story from the 1940s by Jorge Luis Borges. The Library of Babel is, at least on paper, incredibly simple, in that it contains only every possible variation of a single 410-page book. Thus, on the shelves, there are bookcases stretching as far as the eye can see. In this universe library, you can find every book that can be made by combining the 26 letters of the alphabet, along with the space, the comma, and the period. In this library that seems to have no limits, every book you can leaf through is unique, because every arrangement of text that can be written using the 26 letters of the alphabet exists here in only a single copy. Thus, the entirety of this library contains, for example, only a single blank book, or, if you prefer, completely filled with spaces, only one book containing just periods. A single book completely filled with the infinite word, which repeats endlessly from beginning to end. So this library contains a finite number of books. And yet, in the seemingly endless twists and turns of these shelves, the sense of vertigo that overtakes you is absolute. Because in this absolutely colossal library, everything that can possibly be expressed in words is available, somewhere. On the shelves of the Library of Babel, all past, present, and future knowledge is printed. The greatest masterpieces that have been written or will be written one day, as well as those that no one will ever think of. Nestled in the winding corridors of this immense library, every past, present, or future event is discussed and deciphered. There are countless books, each of their 410 pages entirely devoted to detailing the evolution over time of every square meter, every planet, every galaxy in our universe. Others, which uncover the greatest mysteries, reveal the flaws in even our most solid theories, or shed light on crimes that have never been solved. And this phenomenal amount of texts dealing with fictional or real events taking place in our universe is accompanied by an even greater number of books entirely devoted to what is happening or could happen in other universes. There is also a staggering number of books that talk only about you and reveal, in a precise and detailed way, your most intimate thoughts and wildest dreams. There also exists, somewhere, nestled on a shelf, a book in which is written, word for word, what I have been saying to you since you started this video. There are even books describing this infernal library and discussing the reasons for its existence. Somewhere resides the catalog, faithfully describing the contents of the library. Elsewhere, millions of false catalogs exist, along with books proving both their falsehood and that of the true catalog. Each of these texts is criticized, analyzed, and refuted in countless other books. And it also exists in every possible variant that can be made with only 29 characters. Thus, in the Library of Babel, every story told in a clinical way exists in all other possible variations: dramatic, epic, fantastic, or realistic. But also in billions and billions and billions of books, almost identical, differing only by a love letter or a sentence. Because a single variation in character, a tiny shift in the story, is enough to make a book a unique work. So here, all the books that dismantle our most solid physical theories with supposedly sound arguments, as well as those containing all the steps to build incredible and functional machines, sit alongside an immeasurable number of books that are practically identical but contain a large number of typos or errors. And all these variations of texts are translated and interpreted into every possible spoken language, whether it is living or dead, known or unknown. Even those with a different alphabet than the library appear on these shelves. Simply translated phonetically, in this insane library, there are even billions of books written phonetically in languages that do not exist, and just as many, if not more, that allow them to be translated. And all these stories, all these tales exist not only inside unique books, but also in scattered and mixed versions. Many books contain unrelated texts placed side by side or alternated. Somewhere, there is a book in which a harsh critique of the use of artificial intelligence is written phonetically in the language. Papu appears every other line, alongside a philosophical treatise discussing the relevance of the existence of instruction manuals, explaining how to use an open door. In short, you can let your imagination run wild, even if it seems limitless to you. If what you're thinking of can be said, then no matter how absurd your idea is, it exists somewhere, written on the pages of one of the books lost in the sublime and dizzying immensity of the Library of Babel. Maybe even more bewildering. In this library, which contains only every possible 410-page book, there are also, paradoxically, absolutely all the stories that require more than one book to be told. Since these are simply spread out across several 410-page books each, the Universe of Babel library holds the tens of thousands of pages that comprise the latest printed version of the Universalis Encyclopedia, simply spread out across a large number of volumes. In the same way, you can find the 6.4 billion nitrogen bases labeled adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, which make up your entire genetic code, printed in order and spread out across 4,848 different books, or even the totality of all the words spoken by every human since our species has existed, scattered across a phenomenal number of books. Except that the Library of Babel has a very big problem. All the fascinating or simply intelligible books, which can be created using 29 characters and which exist in staggering quantities, are scattered throughout it, in the midst of an absolutely insane mass of books that contain only characters arranged with no apparent logic. Because here you can find a copy of every book that can be made using the source code of this library universe. So the vast majority of the pages in the books found here are just an incomprehensible string of texts on acid. A chaotic sequence of letters that together seem completely devoid of meaning. One might be tempted to think that by tirelessly scouring the endless shelves of this library, you might eventually end up finding, from time to time, in the midst of this senseless cacophony, a reasonable line. And occasionally see here and there, in the labyrinth of a text that seems like complete gibberish, with no apparent logic, words that make a bit of sense to you. But the countless works and unintelligible babblings possible with just 410 pages and 29 characters are your worst enemy. Since its value is so intimidating that it makes you lower your eyes, let's try to look at it directly to get a sense of just how much. In this total library, the astronomical quantity of text that could be food for the mind, fabulous is crushed by the incomparably greater number of indigestible books that seem to be meaningless. We must start by recalling this strange obvious fact. Even though the number of books contained in the Library of Babel is absolutely colossal, it is not infinite, since each work is present in one and only one copy. And this number is actually easy to calculate. In his short story, Borges sets the number of lines of text per page at 40 and the number of characters per line at 80. This means that each book contains exactly 1,312,000 spaces that can be filled by one of the 29 permitted symbols. Thus, the library as a whole contains exactly 29 to the power of 1,312,000 books. To grasp the enormity of this number, let's play a little game. Let's imagine that we could sort the books in the library and gather in one place all the books that are practically blank, or, if you prefer, almost entirely filled with empty space and containing only a few letters here and there. In the Library of Babel, there is a single unique book where all the pages are blank. So far, so good. It also has 1,312,000 books that are blank except for a single printed A. In fact, there is only one unique book where the only A in the entire book is in the first position, available on the first line of the first page. There is only one unique book where the A is in the second position of the first line of the first page, and so on, all the way to the last one. 1,312,000 books is a lot, but you could easily store them all in the largest library in the world, the Library of Congress in the United States, which holds nearly 35 million. Now, if we continue the reasoning by looking at all possible combinations of completely blank books containing exactly 2 A letters, then we reach 1,721 billion. 342,688,000 possible books. Storing all these books would require about 50,000 libraries of Congress. It would be complicated, it would take up the space of a large city, but it wouldn't be impossible now. If you wanted to store all the completely blank books containing only 3 A's, you would need to cover 30% of the Earth's surface to store them all. The number of books with only 7 A's and blanks is 1.34 x 10 to the 45th power. And the amount of space that such a quantity of books would occupy is truly astronomical. On a scale roughly equal to that of our solar system. Now, the Library of Babel contains 29 to the power of 1,312,000 books in total. A number as mind-boggling as the amount of space needed to store them all, which far exceeds that of the observable universe. In fact, even the most optimistic calculations, based on modest-sized books and narrow corridors, tell us that we would need about 10 to the power of 1.8 million times more space than exists in our observable universe to store all the books. That of the insane Library of Babel. And now this library containing all knowledge has turned into a real nightmare. And it becomes absolutely unlikely to find anything sensible by searching it at random. To realize that on the endless shelves of such a library, any coherent text is just a drop lost in an ocean of nonsense. And this on an unimaginable scale. Let me tell you about the infinite monkey paradox, whose bewildering idea is as follows. An immortal monkey frantically and randomly hitting the keys of a typewriter without ever stopping would inevitably end up producing a perfectly accurate copy of Hamlet by Shakespeare, as well as any other novel, as long as it has a little eternity ahead of it. What are the chances that a monkey randomly hitting the keys on a keyboard with the 29 characters of the Library of Babel would write a word as short as infinity? By simplifying to the extreme and assuming that the probability of hitting each key is the same, let's say our monkey has a 1 in 29 chance of hitting the first letter of the word, 1 in 841 for the first 2, 1 in 24,389 for the first 3, and so on. That's the probability that the monkey writes the entire word infinity. And adding each letter multiplies the sense of vertigo every time. And now, here's the probability of writing a 15-letter word like incommensurable, assuming our monkey hits 1 letter per second. It would take him an average of 4 quadrillion years before incommensurable would randomly appear. That's a period of time 300,000 times longer than the time that has passed since the birth of the universe. As for the random appearance of a specific 24-character sentence such as infinitely long and tedious, its probability of occurring is about the same as winning the Euromillions 5 times in a row. You'd have to wait, on average, 1.7 times 10 to the 26th times the universe's age for it to appear, increasing the odds of a masterpiece. One might imagine solving the problem by having fun multiplying the number of monkeys and typewriters. Yet even then, the improbable overwhelms you, because you would have to fill a volume of 10 to the power of 250, 550 times greater than that of our observable universe of monkeys or machines randomly printing letters. And that's since our universe has existed. To have, today, even just a 1 in a trillion chance that it was produced. Hamlet by Shakespeare. Now, keep in mind that this work contains only about 135,000 characters, which is nearly 10 times less than a book from the Library of Babel. And the nightmare of this insane library becomes even more pronounced when you realize that nothing is organized in it. So, even though there are a great number of cryptographic treatises in this universal library that provide keys to decipher many seemingly unintelligible books, these are most likely on a shelf billions of light years away from the book they allow you to translate, buried under a mass of content as useless as it is monstrous. So in this library that is perfect on paper, in the sense that it contains all forms of knowledge, that knowledge is and will remain forever inaccessible, buried under a delirious amount of overwhelming absurdities that prevent anyone from uncovering it. Thus, a fully stocked library of Babel is as useful as an empty one. This is actually the reason why, in Borges' short story, some librarians who wander endlessly through the dreadful mazes of this structure investigate books explaining the secrets of the universe. They try to reduce the overabundance of this unintelligible chaos that turns their desire into disorder by arbitrarily destroying the books they consider indecipherable. And this in order to reduce the amount of useless texts present in this total library. But the most dizzying thing about this story is that the size of this nightmare library, containing within it all stories, can be extraordinarily reduced without reducing the amount of information it contains, because repetition is alternation. Just 2 characters are enough to build a primitive and refined language capable of expressing anything and everything. Thus, nonsense, like all the knowledge and stories contained in the Universal Library of Babel, can be fully translated and transcoded using only the 2 symbols of the alphabet. Morse, whose 2 characters, a dash and a dot, along with the space, are enough by themselves to write everything that can be thought or said. A universal library containing all the 410-page works that can be written in Morse holds an incomparably smaller number of books than the Library of Babel. And yet, even though each book in it contains a smaller amount of information, this reduced library also contains all the stories and knowledge found in the original library, because of the infinite combinations that can be made between each work. And there you have it. The ultimate absurdity stares at you in a reduced yet still exorbitant volume. Since this library, speaking only Morse code, would require 10 to the power of 659, 900 times more space than there is in our observable universe to store all the books it contains. Once more, a limited number of works creates endless stories and meanings. In short, no matter how many characters it allows, the Library of Babel is so vast that its construction will forever remain inaccessible in reality. but to finally convince oneself that it's better to try to write a good story than to pay billions of people to read foolish books. By trying to find one by chance, it's possible to visit a miniature version nestled on a web page on the site libraryofbabel.info or by downloading small programs. You can have fun searching for anything and everything in a miniaturized and digital version of the Library of Babel. A reduced and different version from the original in that it doesn't contain all possible books, but it only randomly generates one of the pages that can be made with 3,200 characters. Every time a book is opened, the software makes sure that the page you're looking at hasn't already been created, in order to respect the original library, which forbids duplicates. When a librarian player turns a new page, an algorithm immediately assigns it a unique identifier for easy retrieval, so that any snippet of intelligible text you might stumble upon by chance remains unique and is always in the same place. In this smaller library, you can browse the books for meaning, hoping to get lucky. But you can also find coherent pieces of text using a search engine. Here, in this hexagon, on this wall, on this shelf, in this book, on this page, is written exactly what I'm telling you right now. To be completely overwhelmed by the sum of accumulated existing knowledge, you can close this window and shut down the internet, then simply contemplate everything humanity has already produced. That makes sense. Let's state the obvious, a library open. You'll never be able to read everything already written. Just think, if you devoted your entire life to reading, and assuming you read an average of 2 books every day, it would then take nearly 48,000 years to go through all of the roughly 35 million printed books contained in the world's largest library. Just in France alone, every year, the National Book Center records the publication of nearly 70,000 different works. A number larger than the works lost in the Great Library of Alexandria fire. But it's still modest enough that you could read all of them in about 96 years of non-stop reading. On a global scale, the number of different books that have been written is estimated to be somewhere between about 150 million and nearly 1 billion works. And this monumental sum of knowledge, written down by humanity, doesn't even take into account scientific knowledge and recent discoveries, which, although often published in technical works, also tells stories about the world around us. If we refer to scientometrics, which analyzes and catalogues the scientific data produced by humanity as a whole, nearly 1.8 million new scientific articles are published every year just in the prestigious journal Nature. If we have fun searching for the number of publications that include the word snail in the title or description, we find nearly 3,000 results. It's enough to make you feel an irresistible urge to curl up in your shell. These publications skillfully capture and reflect all the accumulated knowledge on gastropods and a lifetime's work. I'll never be able to know everything, but I can always be interested in everything. And I can't help but wonder what Borges, poet, philosopher, logician, and mystic, obsessed with labyrinths, mirrors, and the idea of infinity, would have thought about the emergence of the internet and the rise of AI. Maybe he would have seen in this modern world, saturated with information and producing more texts in a single day than all of humanity did before the Age of Enlightenment, the emergence of a senseless library. Basically, the internet without a search engine is a digital labyrinth that no human is able to catalog, and yet its existence gives us the illusion of accessible knowledge. Today, most of us have delegated the quest for meaning to algorithms. In this shapeless mass, we ask artificial intelligences to explore for us this overabundance of data, images, and texts that overwhelm us, to extract sequences from it that they consider coherent, and ultimately to produce pages that resemble a human idea. By relying on what they have browsed, while at the same time creating new works along the way, works they have sometimes hallucinated into reality, like in the fictional Library of Babel. Massification is drowning under a deluge of nightmarish and soulless content filled with inhuman creations produced by programs. How many so-called authors churn out hour-long videos several times a week that they haven't written, understood, or even read, by delegating to an artificial intelligence the task of searching for them in our little library of Babel? For Borges, this library is where a limited set of symbols creates endless meanings, and where all possible statements exist, representing the overflow of language. The Library of Babel tells us that knowledge is not a treasure to be uncovered, but a space to be explored. We humans spend part of our time searching, in vain, in the universe of thoughts, for ideas capable of giving meaning to our lives. Like librarians wandering through the disordered texts of endless books, and for whom meaning exists only through the eyes of the one who discovers and organizes the chaos. To think, to imagine, is to leaf through the possibilities of interpreting the world from within. In this sense, every discovery, every theory, and every poem is just a page torn from endless corridors that one should enjoy exploring while surfing the flood. Because it is the quest itself and not the goal that gives meaning to existence.